Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Once Upon a Time. Another great episode. A lot of stuff went down in this episode. So first of all, I'm going to focus on the Lucy side of things because correction, because I was always curious about this because it's something I brought up. It's like, oh, you have your daughter being like your secretary in this universe, and it turns out that is the case. Ivy is still her daughter in this universe. It's not like they're mother and daughter, in the story realm, and then it's like in this world they're not. It's like, no, that's still her daughter that she has working as her secretary, but she kind of still treats her bad. To the point, it's like the reason why Ivy's just kind of like about whatever, like most things, like having to take Lucy out for trick-or-treating is just because she feels like she has to, because if she doesn't, her mother will get mad at her, and she kind of has to be mean to Jacinda, just because she kind of genuinely doesn't care, but at the same time it's also because it's like her mom would be super pissed if she was any other way with her. So it's kind of an interesting thing, because when Lucy kind of went missing, kind of quote-unquote missing, which is interesting because sometimes I forget about how meta this show is, because inside the show there's people dressed as in The Incredibles, as well as someone dressed as Elsa, which is at the same time I'm like, well, I do forget that in this universe, the fairy tales exist of these particular fairy tale characters. So it is very, the show from the very beginning has always been very meta, but that was just kind of I don't know, it's just interesting when you just think about it too much, all the Disney properties and stuff like that. It's just, I don't know, it's just little winks. They could have picked any costumes, but the fact is they chose Elsa and they also chose Incredibles. I guess maybe that's also because those are new properties that are supposed to be coming in the new future sequels. That's getting too heavy into that, but nevertheless, it was just something that was kind of rattling around in my brain. It's kind of interesting too, because we kind of got a little more insight into Ivy. I did that back and forth between her and Jacinda. It's well, at least I can get my life together. It's not like she has really much of a, it's not like Ivy herself has much of a life, but at the same time, it's Jacinda was yeah, well, I have Henry helping me. He's a friend. I mean, you wouldn't know anything about that. It's that looked like that stung a little bit, because she just didn't really have anything to say about that. Because it's even something Lucy kind of commented on. It's yeah, you weren't invited to the ball. That's why you're kind of stuck. It's you're acting like you had better plans, but the fact of the matter is the one thing you want to do, you didn't get invited to, just because she doesn't have any friends. So immediately, you have her and Henry kind of sitting down and talking. Henry's helping out finding Lucy, but Ivy feels it's just, for her, it's just the one thing she's focused on is the fact is Victoria would get super pissed with her and everything. But it kind of, Henry kind of breaks it down as why are you like that? Why is pleasing your mom so important to her? And it's because outside of her mom's love, she doesn't have anything. It's not like she has any friends. She doesn't really have a life outside of that. So it's only thing she has to hold on to is her mother's love. That's why she does everything to appease her mom, which is super sad and depressing when you actually think about it. Because it's something that has come up before. I've pointed out, and other characters pointed out. She's not nearly as bad as her mom. It's she doesn't always agree with the way her mom does things, but it's I'll do it because mother will love me, and it's just kind of sad. It's you have one side of things where it's Cinderella, who do anything to get away from Victoria, just Victoria only sees her, whereas Ivy would give anything to have her see her, so it's very sad and depressing, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, Henry's got his own baggage too, that being his family situation, which you had that conversation between him and Ronnie earlier in the episode, which is obviously very wink, wink, nudge, nudge, with the whole situation of her being well, the fact of the matter is, you shouldn't be too afraid to move on, because moving on doesn't mean forgetting. It means, you fell in love once, you're entitled to fall in love again, It's not the easiest thing, but, they take the steps there, which obviously, it coming from Regina, that means a lot, because at another point in time Henry was giving her that same advice, just moving on past Daniel to eventually be with Robin, to eventually where she ends up, during this tale, it's that you deserve to be happy, so this is interesting that roles have kind of switched. It's just Henry was kind of her Jiminy Cricket. And now it's in this world, she's kind of acting as his, I mean, it makes you wonder, is that when you actually really break it down, is that kind of the role she is kind of feeling, kind of being his, not necessarily his conscience, but kind of being his guide, essentially. So that's just kind of interesting, because he was her, I guess it also fits because the fact of the matter is he had always been her guide anyway. So I don't know, it's just kind of interesting when you actually sit there and think about it, even more in depth like that. So, sadly, it doesn't seem like there's any progression in that, form of Jacinda and Henry, like even though he likes her and she obviously likes him, but like neither one's really like she's kind of wait. I guess she was kind of waiting for him to say something because he's going to ask her out to like to hang out or whatever, like Ronnie suggested, but he just couldn't. But then there's that moment at the end where it's like, oh, Ivy, it's like, oh yeah, about us not being able to do that, like her talking to her mom or him talking to Jacinda, which immediately my brain, the looks in each other's eye, like I had this weird inkling feeling. I'm like, don't tell me something weird is going to happen where it's like Ivy and Henry are going to kind of become a thing just to kind of complicate things. Because in retrospect, it's like when you look back at like season 1, there was that whole situation with Snow White, Mary Margaret, her and David, like she had that he was having an affair with her. That was kind of, which is like, oh right, I forgot. Like, yeah, that was a thing. Like she does the whole cheating thing. Like he was already in a relationship. I can't remember if they were married or not. They might have been. I don't remember. But definitely like he was kind of quote unquote cheating on her with Snow White, Mary Margaret. So it's like that might be the type of situation where it's like, oh, there's obviously something there, but it's like this is something where it's like, well, it's uncomplicated, you know. It's like any other, like each of their own situations, like her standing up to her mom, super complicated situation, him dealing with him like trying to deal with his own situation of like, oh, my child and wife are going, even though that's not real, because my wife and child are really right in front of me. Because I'm surprised Henry never really commented on in this episode. Like, it's just he deals with it. I guess like the whole situation of him kind of getting caught up in it, like any part of him that was slightly believing Lucy, the previous episode when he came across the grave site, the cemetery, I'm sure like it just vanished and it was almost like it was never there. But or maybe he just thought it away, like, that's just me kind of buying into our kid's game or whatever. Here it is, reality smacked me in the face again. So something like that. But it seems like they kind of might be alluding to something there, which is kind of weird and interesting when you think about it, considering the fact is that's technically Henry's stepsister-in-law. So that's interesting. That's going to be super complicated, considering the fact that you have feelings for it. Might seem that's definitely going to get used against him later on. If something happens between them, if they get intimate or whatever, Victoria's definitely going to hang that over his head. That's going to complicate things with Lucy and Jacinda. So that's where my mind is with that, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that front whether anything comes about that. But and then obviously the other side of the episode, the big side of the episode, is split between here in Hyperion Heights as well as in the past, and that is dealing with Rumpel, in this case Weaver. And it's so interesting to see Alice kind of talking, obviously wearing the rabbit mask and everything, and her talking in riddles the way she does, like basically like, why would you waste your time with an impossible riddle? Why would I waste my time on one that is possible? It's essentially, there's no fun in that. The real fun is in figuring out a puzzle that can't be figured out, you know. So but basically this episode deals with her confronting Victoria, and like basically Victoria wanted her on her meds because, as we know, Victoria knows about everything, she remembers everything. And then you have her putting Weaver in the seat of, hey, I need you to get her to be on her pills. If you don't, I have some recordings of you doing some shady stuff, whether it's just you doing shady stuff on your own or whether it's shady stuff that you did on my behalf. More so, I would assume it's shady stuff he's done on his own. So it's like, hey, you either deal with the girl or I deal with you. So which one do you want to go? I mean, because the whole like dirty cop thing, which in retrospect is like, like, because it was something I brought up last episode, the whole thing about how Weaver handled that whole situation. I forgot what the exact circumstances was last episode. Dealing with that committee guy, construction committee guy. Was that last episode or was that episode before last? No, that was definitely, I think, last episode. But that committee guy, like Weaver's way of handling it, he's like, well, this way, when he gets contacted by Victoria, he'll contact me. So it's like, it's a situation of like, I was wondering, is he doing it because he's a dirty cop? You know, he's kind of got his own motives or anything, or was he just actually legitimately just trying to help out? And this episode kind of dives deeper into that aspect, and it kind of makes sense. And it's something that Alice kind of points at, just like, you know, the man beneath the cop. Or should I say beneath the beast? I'm like, the way she kept talking around things, I'm like, you know, don't you? You are really remembering, you're breaking through. But obviously to anyone else, it just sounds like the mad rantings of a girl. Which I assume that kind of, that kind of applies with Alice in general, not just, I'm not that familiar with the Alice storyline. Wonderland in general, I've never read the books. Obviously, I know the movie, but that's about it. I mean, it seems like this almost kind of ties in with Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, because it was a similar thing where it's like everyone thought Alice was crazy for believing and knowing what she knew about Wonderland, because it's like, oh, you're make-believe, it's all in your head, lock her up. kind of a similar situation. So the fact is that applies across both stories makes you go. And there's like what was it? American McGee's Alice. There was like two Alice games he made. There was like I've only ever played the sequel. There's kind of a similar thing there too. So it's like I guess that's canonical all across the Alice stories. That when she goes back to the real world, having that problem of like no one believes you about the craziness that you experienced in Wonderland. So nevertheless, I do like the points of her being like, it makes me feel like, oh, she wants to make me tiny again. I'm like, oh, dude. Like, I just like just that, like taking the story and I'm applying it in that sense. And obviously the words having like a double meaning in a sense of like, oh yeah, this is them trying to shackle me down, keep me down, but at the same time representing tiny because of the whole getting big and tiny situation. I don't know, little stuff like that. I really enjoyed like, that the story does well. She is trying to get Rumpel to remember who he really is, and this all ties into the past we get to see. I will praise Rumpel for what he does in that like past scenarios. He leaves the dagger behind. He has never been this strong throughout the entire series. He has never been so to the point he's like, nope, I don't need a dagger. I don't need a dagger. Like, yes, he had moments, but it was like, no, he was willing to throw it all away multiple times, never really dabbling in his match. And it's like, I mean, to be fair, we're kind of getting like, slice of life moments, but still it just seems like the overall theme is like he kind of didn't give into his dark powers anymore. I mean, this is kind of like everyone's happily ever after type of situation, so which does beg the question, like, those are the main stories anyway, so I guess like their happily ever afters weren't 100% wrapped up like everyone else's, like Regina's and Rumpel, since they are still kind of part of this ever going story, because their stories have folded into becoming a part of Henry's story as well. So kind of getting all nitpicky and breaking it down like that. But nevertheless, it's all about the fact is that he wants to be human. Obviously, Gideon getting older, which is like in retrospect, I'm like, I'm such an idiot for thinking like that. I was like, oh yeah, when the series takes place, Gideon's going to be like a teenager. I'm like, no, you idiot, because time works differently in different realms. So if they decide to go to different realms, he's like 18 at one point, and obviously later on is supposed to represent him being older. Because like him and Henry are not the same age. Like he's like 10 years young. Like Henry's like 28 now. Like I think Gideon would be like 18 now. But it's like, well, if technically the whole like them traveling around with him and time working differently in certain worlds, it's like, well, of course he'd be like roughly 28 himself too, which would beg the question of like, does that mean he's coming to his powers as well? I mean, from the little bit we've seen, we haven't really seen him tap into his powers because he's supposed to be a savior himself, so I don't know if that's still going to apply. So him playing a part in the story would represent something very differently, considering the fact is that he is probably the appropriate age now. I don't know if that's going to be a situation of him and Henry clashing or anything like that. I don't know. I mean, not necessarily clashing, but more so, I feel like the fact is that he is still a part of this story because Rumpel is. But nevertheless, it's all about trying to find a way to make him human, and Rumpel's kind of scared about it too because it's like, oh, life is moving so fast. Look, he's already 18 and he's about to move out. It's like, we should have been spending more time raising him. It's like, we wanted these grand adventures while also trying to figure out this whole dagger situation, but we were there for him, we raised him, we had a happy family, so we did our job. So, but when they were at the Edge of Realms, it was like, to me, I couldn't help but smile when you see like Belle and then like reading a book and you see Rumpel looking at her and she looks at him and they smile. It warms my heart because I'm like, oh, stop being so damn adorable and in love. Because I feel like you've seen those moments between them, but you've never seen it like that. Those little cute moments between Rumpel and Belle. Like, obviously they've had their complicated history that we all know way too well, but it's just so interesting to see that side of them, just like spending so much time together. Time works differently there and everything. Ultimately, Belle kind of didn't tell him the entire truth because like the sun that's setting in the legend that she was, translating for him was representing her, that basically he has to learn to let her go, because once he's able to let her go and believe that he'll meet her again in some other life, because they always find their way back to each other no matter what throughout their entire story, which makes them kind of right at home with the Charmings, because that's their thing of always, we will always find each other. So it's like they always find their way back to each other, and it's like, this will prove, don't try and use your magic, just hold, like, love me and know that, our belief that our love is so strong that it will essentially transcend death, that not even death will kind of keep us separate, that we will find our way back to each other. And initially it was kind of interesting too that Gideon was like, oh, let me take that burden for you. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, he would. But then it's like, no, he took up the power of the Dark One initially for Bellfire, and it's like, and it cost him his son. He's not about to like doom another son to be kind of having his life destroyed by this dagger. So, whereas Regina's whole story was about her kind of balancing her past and her evil, with who she is, kind of like that, that internal struggle of hers. This is his burden to bear. Apparently, has that always been a thing about a guardian, or is that something that he recently discovered in some of their texts and stuff like that about how to deal with the dagger and kind of return him to being immortal again? Is it the aspect of like, it seems like that's probably a more recent story thing. I don't think that was ever, I vividly don't ever remember that being brought up. So that has to be a new story element. But it's like, oh, who that guardian is going to be, which is I am curious about that. Like, who is the guardian? Is it supposed to be Alice since he met Alice? Because Alice was the one trying to get him to remember in this episode. It was kind of actually a little sad too when he tricked her into taking her pills, and she's like, the fact of the matter is, like, people are always taking from me, and I just never thought it would be you. Because like there was a part of her that actually, like, it begs a question. I'm curious to, like, I hope we get to see more of that. I'd love to kind of see what their time was like for her to kind of do stuff for Rumple. It must have been like they must have been pretty like close, like for her to. And she must, I mean, at least in this world, she must look at Weaver. Well, no, because she's herself as Alice, so she must look at Rumple as a, like, actual friend, so for her to kind of, like, respond like that. So it was just kind of interesting to me. But she's basically like, you can try that you're not just a dirty cop. Like, she's like, I see what's underneath. Like, I see the good man that's there. There's only ever been one other person that's ever saw the good in him like that, and that being Belle. So, like I said, I'd like to find out like what happened in the time that they spent together, because after Belle died, he ended up going, like, it seems like it takes place like roughly around the time of the beginning of the season, because like as he comes through the portal, he ends up running into Alice, and then immediately Henry drives by, which I don't think at the time he realized it was Henry. So it's probably not till later on when he heard about bumps about Henry popping up, and he's just like, whoa, that's Henry, because that was the moment he met Alice. So I guess later on at that point, he made Alice go, hey, keep an eye on my, like, wandering grandson, would you? So, but, back in Hyperion Heights, she tried to get him to see the cup. And it's like, because I was like, oh, what's this item that she's going to show him? I was like, is it the dagger? It's going to be the dagger, isn't it? And I'm like, no, it's, you idiot. I'm like, of course, it's the teacup. I'm such an idiot for not realizing. Of course, that's the most significant thing of their relationship. It's kind of like, it is their, essentially in this, they're treating it like the rose, that bound them together. And more often the stories, like, they're bound together by that rose. In this case, they're by that chipped teacup, because it represents their history, which ended with Alice ended up just shooting him, which I didn't see that coming. I thought the whole point was like, oh, shoot him, and then it's like, oh man, like he's going to like not be affected, and he's going to be like, whoa, what is? No, he got shot and started bleeding out. I was like, ugh. Because apparently, like, he had told her to do that. Like, I guess if he can't remember and come back on his own and find some way to become mortal, then it's just like, if I'm in a position to be mortal, just shoot. I don't know whether this was all supposed to be like, shoot me so I can cross back over, get close to Belle, and remember everything, or what. It was kind of interesting because he did kind of like say like, no, it wasn't Ivy. Not Ivy. It wasn't Tilly. It was someone else that shot me. Someone in a mask. And then you even have like Killian being like, oh, really? Wow, you actually do care. You pretend like you don't, when in actuality you do. So, I mean, that's the tragic thing about, has always been about Rumple. He does love people. It was always power that meant so much. But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's what makes this situation so interesting, because he turned away that power. Like, he, on multiple occasions, was like, no, screw this whole dagger situation. I'm like, without hesitating, he really did like give it his all. And like I said, in the entire series, he's had moments, but nothing as powerful as these moments, which is kind of like astounding to me. So that's why I just can't help but praise him enough for it. So that is just like super sad. I'm just thinking about like, I mean, that's kind of like, I'm sure, the vampire dilemma too, of like, oh yeah, you're immortal and the person that you love sadly isn't it? And it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's not like they didn't have great years together, like had a beautiful, amazing family, raising Gideon together, going on great adventures, being super cutie and madly in love, So, but still, it's just like no matter what the situation is, no matter how much time you spend with someone, letting them go is never an easy thing. And it's like you can't blame Rumple for wanting to do more. It's just like you're the one woman that's ever been able to see past who I am. See past the beast and just love me for me, and then be the person that I can love in return. So I don't know, like I'm getting all gooey and emotional, but it's just, I don't know, it's super sweet. But there was also an interesting moment, too, where Killian was playing chess with Alice, which then begs the question: is Alice his daughter? I think I threw that out there as like a possibility in one recording. I think I might have cut it out because I was like, I thought it was like, I was like, no, there's no way. That's just me being stupid. I don't remember if I cut that out of any recording or not. I might have kept it. I might have cut it out. I don't remember. Because there was one person in particular. I was like, oh, it could be this person that I remember cutting out. I might have kept that in. I don't want to give myself too much credit about something like that. I mean, truth be told, this could be a red herring. It's like, oh yeah, she just likes playing chess. That doesn't mean that's his daughter. Because obviously, like, I won't say specifically, just in case anyone doesn't want. Another character's name has been thrown out there as being like, oh, that person's potentially their daughter. I won't say what particular character, because it's like, oh, you might not want to be spoiled about said character being in show. You're like, oh, I didn't know. I wish you hadn't said anything because I wanted to be a surprise. So I won't say anything. But there's another potential person that was like someone that throw that idea out of this particular character being Killian's daughter. I was like, that would make sense, huh? That'd be so interesting. But it does seem like it could possibly be Alex, because Alice. It kind of gets so confusing when you think about the fact that there's all these different realms and everything like that. He's from a wish realm, but then also if Alice is from like, how would that whole thing work out anyway? Who knows? Maybe Alice is secretly connected to his daughter or something. I don't know. Like I said, I get the feeling that's more of a red herring, but I'm also curious, like, I was just about to say, I let it slip away, so I don't remember. Whatever. That kind of bums me out because there was something on the tip of my tongue. Nevertheless, moving on. The final thing I want to bring up is the fact is it does seem like Rumple might remember. Right. Okay. So technically, what I was thinking before is connected to what I'm talking about now. But it's like the way he was talking, he's like, dearie. And it's like, oh yeah, you can. There's nothing you can do that can hurt me now. Which is like, I wish you hadn't said that, Rumple, because that's the moment where the villain's like, oh, you don't think you have any weaknesses? Ta-da! Thanks for putting a target on your back to make me go, oh, I'm definitely going to find your weakness now. So, because in his mind, it's like Belle's gone, and I think he's slowly thinking about that. But in his mind, he might not think maybe Gideon's here or somewhere within Victoria's range, or at the very least. Which is the other question was that what I was going to ask? Never mind. I don't think that was it either. I'm sorry. I do apologize. I'm getting all confusing right now. So like I said, the main point is it does seem like he does remember everything, which does beg the question: is he like, the fact is he's like, is magic completely stripped away in this world? It does seem like it is. I mean, much like the original Curse Regina placed, anyway, it got rid of magic. So it does beg the question of, like, even if he remembered, because like, even with the original curse, when he remembered everything, it's not like he had the magic until after the curse was broken. So he might not be the immortal Dark One at this point in time. Maybe some point between then and now, the curse, which is now, maybe he ended up giving the dagger over, so that maybe that's why it's not in his possession. Maybe that's why he's more so human under this curse, is because he no longer is the Dark One, which, like, once again, wouldn't apply because he was still human under the original curse anyway, even though he would later on still be the Dark One because of the whole magic thing. So, I don't know. I'm kind of talking myself in circles, so I'm going to shut up because I'm just making it super confusing for everyone. So I do apologize for that. So, like I said, overall, a great episode. I'm super excited to see what the next episode has in store for us. I got a little glimpse of it. If you are curious about little spoilers, it does seem like it's dealing with Tiana, which I think I'm saying her name wrong. I always forget how they say it because they say her name a little differently than how I'm saying it. I say Tiana, but I think it's actually pronounced. I think it's Tiana. I think that might be what I'm thinking of. I say Tiana, but I think they pronounce it Tiana. But nevertheless, either way. So if you're curious, it does seem like the next episode is going to be diving into her a little bit more. So specifically, not even probably diving into the resistance stuff, but probably stuff leading up to her becoming part of the resistance. I would assume just from that tiny glimpse I got of it. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Until next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.